Max Chadwick, our good friend from PFF.com. You can find his work there. Joins us yet again. Good morning, Max. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, man. Thank you for hopping on. I want to start. Have you flipped or switched any opinions on any prospects or teams that might be looking at any of these prospects? Like, what's something you have flipped your opinion on in regards to the NFL draft throughout the last few weeks?
Good question. I try to stay as consistent as possible from the college tape that I've watched, and obviously, like as a college football analyst, I've been watching tape the whole year. So I haven't really drastically changed my opinions on any of the guys, but I would say the one guy that I don't know if I'd change my opinion on him, but I think he's going to go a lot higher than where I expected him to go originally during the season is JJ McCarthy, the quarterback from Michigan. Originally I thought he was going to be a mid to late first-round pick, and now it sounds like he's not getting out of the top 5 or top 10. So I still think he should be a mid to late first-round pick, but it sounds like right now he's going to be the fourth quarterback off the board to maybe the Vikings if they trade up or someone else. But, yeah, it sounds like he's going to be going a lot higher than where I expected during the season.
I mean, it's kind of a tale as old as time, right, of drafting quarterbacks too early because you're desperate. It's the most important position, and so you're reaching and you're trying to find that guy. On that note, like I wouldn't be shocked if we end up seeing 4 or 5 of these guys go in the top 10. You get a run on them, especially if McCarthy goes in the top 5. How many quarterbacks in your mind are like worthy, have put the tape out there, have the measurables, the intangibles, all? How many of them are worthy of being a top 10 pick?
Oh, top 10. That's I would say definitely 2. I think Caleb and Drake are definitely worth top 10 picks. Caleb Williams and Drake May. I would take Jaden Daniels probably in the top 10 as well. I think, he's probably not a top 10 prospect, but that obviously the positional importance will push him up there. So I would say those 3 are definitely worthy of being top 10 picks. And I think you can make an argument for JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix. I think they're worthy of being first-round picks. I don't know about top 10, though, but I would definitely say that the 3 of Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, those are the 3 I'd be okay with taking in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm looking at a few mocks here, and McCarthy, as you mentioned, has certainly sprung up on a lot of the mock drafts. A lot of teams think the Minnesota Vikings are in love with him. They may trade into the top 5 and draft him. I want to ask you, Max, I think we're kind of in lockstep in some ways on McCarthy. I still wouldn't want him in the first round at all. Can you explain this to me? I mean, I'm stupid not covering an NFL team guy. I feel like I have an okay idea of football, been watching it my whole life. I don't get the McCarthy stuff, but all of these teams or all of these pundits seem to be kind of saying a lot of the same stuff. He's shooting up. Oh, a lot of teams love him. What am I missing on JJ McCarthy that, to me, I question if he's even a first-round guy? The top 10 stuff, I just don't get it. You're going to be asked to be the franchise guy maybe in year 1, if not halfway through year 1. What am I missing on JJ McCarthy that I, for some reason, just didn't see in college?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and honestly, I lean more towards your side. Like I think he's I'd be less upset with it if he was a second round pick than I would if he's a top 10 pick. I mean, upset's not really the word to use there, but I'm kind of with you where I'm like, hey, I would take this guy mid to late first round, and I think top 10 is more egregious than a second round pick would be for him, honestly. So I think what NFL teams, though, see in him is that he's kind of like a ball of clay that they can mold into a potential franchise quarterback. I know he's a really, really great leader of a locker room. I've heard nothing but amazing things about him as a person and as a teammate. And also he's got all the tools that you could want in a quarterback. He's obviously got to put on some weight, and I think that'll help him really unlock his arm talent even more. But he just wasn't really asked to do a lot for Michigan this past year. I mean, they really relied on that run game, relied on their excellent defense. I mean, that Penn State game, he threw 8 passes the entire game. They didn't throw a single pass in the second half. And that was a close game the entire game. It wasn't like it was a blowout either. So he just really wasn't relied on to do too much. It's kind of like an all-ceiling pick that you're going with JJ McCarthy. Don't get me wrong. When he was asked to throw the ball, like, he was excellent. So I just don't think he was asked to carry an offense like the other top quarterbacks in this draft were. And like you said, I mean, that's kind of a scary proposition when you're all of a sudden being thrust into being the franchise signal caller for a team, and that's a little scary for me when a guy hasn't really been asked to carry a team like that before.
Yeah, that's a point that I agree completely with. Like, if you're Brock Purdy going late and you're just gonna, hey, come be a part of our offense, maybe it's a fit. But if you're going to the top 5, man, you're asked to be. You're the focal point. You are the offense,
Right.
and so I'm with you on that one. Let's go to the wide receiver group. We have 2 guys here in the Northwest that I know a lot of folks are curious where they're going to end up with. That position to me is fascinating. We know the importance of the NFL. The guys that are atop the class, like Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably going to be the first one. Malik Neighbors is maybe next. Rome Odunze, and then you go from there with Thomas or A.D. Mitchell all the way down to Troy Franklin. Is there a big enough separation that you feel like one of those guys is worth it in the top 10? Or do you look at it and say, man, like if I could get an A.D. Mitchell or a Troy Franklin at the end of the first round, I like that value better. How do you feel about the wide receiver room?
I think there's a pretty clear gap between the top 3 guys in this class and everyone else. It's still a really, really good receiver class overall, don't get me wrong. So if you don't get one of the top 3 guys, you can still get a really good player in the first round. But I think the top 3 of Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, I think they're head and shoulders above everyone else in this draft right now. And I think those 3 would be wide receiver ones in a lot of other drafts. So, I mean, you got 3 legitimate, really unbelievable receiver prospects. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably like a once-in-a-decade type of talent, and I think Malik Neighbors is right behind him, honestly. And then Rome Odunze, like I said, would be a wide receiver one in a lot of other drafts that we've had recently. So I would spend top 10 picks on all 3 of those guys, and I do think all 3 of those guys will end up being top 10 picks. And I think they're worth it, honestly. So there's still some really good options later in the first round if you still need a receiver. But like I said, I think those 3 are pretty clearly the top 3 receivers. And I think those are pretty clearly 3 guys that I would be surprised if they're not number 1 receivers in the NFL.
A quick follow-up on that. Does it, I don't bother, maybe not be the right word here, but like Harrison Jr. doing literally nothing, not talking, not working out, not doing a pro day, basically telling the NFL to piss off. Draft me if you like me. I'm not doing the dance the way everybody else does. Where does that sit with you? Where do you think it sits with NFL teams? No big deal. Who cares? He's so good. We'll take him 4th in Arizona because Neighbors and Odunze have both done things, I think, throughout this process that make a lot of other pundits say, you know, maybe they're better than this dude. Like Odunze was doing the drill over and over and over again at the combine because he refused to settle for a time. I love that. I love that a dude is that competitive. Maybe that doesn't matter in the NFL because Harrison Jr.'s, 6'4" and 220 pounds and has great hands. Where does the not trying to compete or showcase anything at all post the Ohio State career register for you?
Yeah, listen, I love when guys work out because I love to get all these registered times for them. So obviously, I was a little disappointed that he didn't work out, but I'm not going to hold that against him at all. I think Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze are playing catch up. Honestly, I think they're saying, "Hey, I'm trying to get over Marvin Harrison Jr." Marvin Harrison Jr. has basically everything to lose by working out, so I don't blame him at all for not doing anything, and I respect him honestly for saying, "Hey, my tape is my tape, man." That's the only thing you should be worried about because I was dominant on tape for 2+ years. Go check that out. And nowadays, I know people love the verified times that we get for these players. We have GPS tracking, and we have this at PFF too. We have GPS tracking on all these players. So you can actually see in-game speed. Like one guy last year, Puka Nacua, didn't really run that fast for 40. He was one of the fastest players we had in our tracking, and we kind of were like, hey, this guy should be going a little bit higher than where he's projected. And obviously, he had an unbelievable rookie year. Marvin Harrison Jr. GPS tracking is an incredibly fast receiver. I think he's hit over 20 miles per hour multiple times, which is a really, really fast, obviously, receiver for him, and especially as someone at 6'4". So we have all these verifiable numbers in game that I don't really think it matters too much what he would have tested out as, and honestly, it only could have hurt him probably with where he's being projected right now. So I don't really care at all about that, and I think he's still worthy of being the 4th overall pick, or maybe even higher if he is taken with the Patriots pick. So, yeah, I'm not really too worried about that at all. I don't really put any stock into him not working out.
Is Max Chadwick, PFF.com. You can find his latest article on the 2024 NFL Draft, the top 10 interior offensive line prospects if everyone in college was eligible. That's where you can find his latest work.
We did it with JJ McCarthy, so staying away from him, Max. Is there a guy that you just, I just don't get it when you look at, the draft boards and where people are projecting players to go, that you think is just, the value is not there? I don't understand it. And then on the flip side of that, is there somebody that you're looking at and saying, man, why is this guy not, to your Puka Nacua point, is there a guy out there that you think is maybe kind of a sleeper?
Oh, good question. I'm trying to look at the consensus big board right now. Obviously, the JJ McCarthy is one of them that I think it's just a little bit too high for my liking. Another guy that I think is probably going to go a little bit higher than at least I would take him is probably Dallas Turner, the edge defender from Alabama. I think he's a really good player and worthy of being a first-round pick, don't get me wrong, but I think he's going to be the first defensive player off the board, probably with the Atlanta Falcons pick at number 8 overall. I don't know if I would take him in the top 10. I still really like him, and I still think he's probably a top 20, top 25 player in this class, but I think top 10 is a little rich for me. I don't know, but I'm trying to think about some late-round sleepers that can really break out, like Puka Nacua, but one guy who still might be a first-round pick that I really like, honestly, is Kool-Aid McKinstry. And he's a guy that a lot of people are kind of dropping to the second round right now. I still think he's the number one corner in this draft. And I know people might call me crazy for saying that because he's just an above-average athlete, whereas the other top corners in this class are all elite athletes. But, man, Kool-Aid McKinstry has been the best corner in college football for 2 years in a row now, in a Nick Saban defense as well. I don't really understand why he's being, mocked late first round, early second round. I still think he might be the top corner. And the other guy I would point out that's also probably going to be a first-round pick, but I think should be going higher, Laiatu Latu from UCLA was probably the best defensive player in college football this past year. I think he's the number one edge in this draft. And if the Falcons were going to take an edge at number 8, I would take him, honestly. So those are two guys that I think still are going to be first-round picks. So they're not obviously sleepers. But I think they deserve to go a lot higher than the late first round, early second round projections that we see for them right now.
Max, I'll ask you one more. We'll let you go here. Quarterback. There's going to be a run on quarterbacks. Vegas is saying 4 quarterbacks within the top 6 picks could potentially happen in this. Is offensive line the position in this draft that you think the non-quarterback teams can benefit the most from having these guys fall down? Because there's 4 or 5 of these guys, and a lot of them are local guys we got to watch in Pac-12 at Oregon, Oregon State, Washington. Is that the position in the draft that the other teams benefit because there's so much quarterback desperation that those offensive linemen fall? Or do we see other teams try to trade up to go get these offensive linemen and not hope that they slip to them?
No, I think that's a great point. I think the offensive line class this year is absolutely ridiculous. It's one of the best I've ever seen, honestly. And I think that and receiver, I think those are the 2 positions where if you don't need a quarterback and you could use a receiver or use an offensive lineman, you are licking your chops right now because, like I said, there's probably could be 6 quarterbacks that go in the first round, maybe even 6 quarterbacks in the top 15 picks. Which I believe would set the record. So I definitely think that teams that need an offensive lineman, there are 10 offensive linemen that you could argue for being first-round picks, maybe even more than that. And receivers is 8 or 9 as well. So I think there are some really good players that could be falling into the teens and the 20s, and teams would be very, very happy to get them. So, yeah, this loaded quarterback class, in addition to a lot of teams needing a quarterback, could push some really, really good players down the board and really work out for some teams that need a tackle or interior offensive lineman or even a wide receiver.
Well, we always know it works out when teams get desperate and trade up to get quarterbacks. It always works out in the NFL that way. Max Chadwick on Twitter, at Max Chadwick CFB, does a great job covering college football and the NFL draft for Pro Football Focus. Go find his latest article on the 2024 NFL Draft Top 10 Interior Offensive Line Prospects if everyone in college was eligible. Thanks for hopping on with us, Max. It's good to catch up with you. Enjoy the draft process, and we look forward to talking down the road.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
There we go. Good stuff from Max Chadwick of PFF.com.
It is wild. The more that I read, the more mocks that I see, I think there's a really good chance the top 4 picks in the draft are quarterbacks. And
good luck.
Good luck.
Yep.
I'm not all the way in on Caleb. I understand the questions about Drake May. I wouldn't touch Jaden Daniels with a top 10 pick. I wouldn't touch JJ McCarthy with a top 10 pick. But teams are desperate. Well, you're telling me Washington at 2 is going to be like, let's trade out. Let's be patient here. There's no chance in hell. And have fun with that, man.